Right, I think we are live.
Are we there?
Yes,
Yes.
yes,
So,
and let's get started. This is a front. You wanna get started?
yep, let's do that. Okay, so good morning, good evening, everyone, wherever you're joining in from. Welcome to the 17th episode of our podcast series that myself, Shantanu, and Aniket we host under the Where Strategy Meets Execution umbrella title. And I think we have covered a lot of interesting, pertinent, and invigorating topics so far, Aniket.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
Everything that has to do with a small and medium business, and even of course large enterprises. Some of the things that we have discussed so far have been all encompassing, if I can call that. They are relevant for almost everyone, any business owner trying to find his or her way in the business world, right? And the last one that we did was specifically on the India EU free trade agreement that was very recently signed, and we thought that was such a important and deep topic that it warranted one more episode on it, right? So here we are today, talking again on the same India UFTA trade, but then today we'll be focusing more on the compliance part of it. So again, one of the biggest takeaways that any business can should look for when they think about this free trade agreement is going to be around compliance. So we'll get into that detail, but let's get through the introductions first. So my name is Shantanu Kelkar, and I am a founder and principal consultant at 1.618 Business Consulting. It's a management consulting firm. I work with small, medium businesses as well as large MNCs to help them develop and deliver business plans, strategy business plans, product marketing plans. And I work with them through the execution of the plan as well. I claim that as one of the USPs for me, because a lot of consultants do just stop at developing the plan and then they don't have skin in the game. On the other hand, I do try to work with the companies, with my clients, through the entire journey of conceptualizing the plan and then actually delivering it with specific outcomes in mind. I have about 20 plus years of experience working with automation companies such as Emerson Process Management and Honeywell Automation. I also worked with Frost and Sullivan, which is a management consulting firm. And I've lived in about six, seven different countries. So with that luggage of experience on my back, I started this 1.6 minute business consulting a couple of years back, and it's been a roller coaster ride so far. One of the good things about starting this has been this opportunity to work with Aniket or do this podcast series with Aniket, and the opportunity to talk to you guys as well as part of that. So that's me, Aniket. How about you?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Shantanu. Glad to be here and sharing the stage with you. Hello, all. Yeah, this is our 17th podcast. Can't believe, we are on this journey and keep
Yeah.
delivering it. So, thank you all for the listener, whoever have been commenting and commenting on our post and engaging. Thank you. My background is 15 plus years in supply chain automation industry. I currently working in a management consultancy, working on a pharmaceutical manufacturing automation right now. But before that, I worked in Amazon for almost 2.5 years, where I actually automated warehouses, provided robotic solutions, and also developed processes for their efficient supply chain. While doing that, I did manage to save around $9.8 million in saving through introducing by new processes, optimizing the existing processes. That's something definitely I'm proud of, and that's why I'm talking about that is because that's exactly the value that I bring to the companies that I actually consult. I bring them clarity on their execution plan, giving them confidence on how they can optimize their expenses, also streamline their operations, and bring out efficiencies while keeping an eye on new technology emerging, and making sure the strategy does meet execution, which is exactly this podcast is about. So with that in mind, as Shantanu already gave good insights about this topic, I'm excited to dive in this. So let's get started, Shantanu. What we got?
Yeah, yeah, it's a fascinating topic, Aniket. We have taken this up because of the recently signed India EU FTA deal, but then this has been in the making for more than 2 decades now.
Yeah,
The specific deal itself, but then the overall tariff world has seen a lot of ups and downs, especially recently. It may not have hit the headlines or the front pages of the newspapers every time, but it has always been around. And SMBs, small and medium businesses, especially exporters from India, from US, they have always had this as one of their key KPIs or one of the things to watch out for the more than past 30 years at least, when a lot of these tariffs came into shape, right? And people have been obsessing over how do I get the tariffs down from an X percentage to a Y percentage, let's say a 12% to 8%, for example, here.
yeah,
And with deals like the one that EU and India signed last week, um, that brings in some unprecedented changes in the entire tariff structure, right? With that one deal, it claims to eliminate 99.5% of tariffs. So that's a big step change, a big game changer for everyone who is involved in that. Right? Isn't that so?
absolutely, absolutely. And that's why, this is not just about avoiding penalties anymore. I think companies that get this one uh, right are unlocking around 2 crore to around 10 crore in new revenue, which is spectacular. I mean, if you think about, with investment of around 15 to 20, 50 lakh, you are getting a more ROI on your investment. So let's look at these three pillars. Shantanu, what do you think? Like, these are CBAM, GDPR, and rules of origin. Let's dive into the numbers and see what we have. Like, right, the CBM
Yeah,
is
let's go through
essentially.
CBAM once. What do you say about that?
Yeah, CBM is essentially a carbon tax, basically, that the EU is imposing on imports. So think of it as a EU saying, uh, we have forced our manufacturers to go green, right? They're
Mhm.
very big on green technology as well as ESGs, as you might have heard. Like,
Yep. Yep.
largest adoption of EV vehicles is in Europe, as you've seen that. Now, if you want to sell to us, they are saying that you need to prove you are equally green or
Mhm.
pay a penalty. So,
Mhm.
and where it impacts, basically, the hardest impact of this CBM is to the steel exporters, because
Mhm.
we are talking about around 102 to 190 euros per ton of carbon dioxide emitted. And
Yeah, yeah,
traditionally,
absolutely.
Indian steel exporters, they have a lot of, like, how they are manufacturing it. There is a lot of carbon footprint that they need to think
Mhm.
about in short term and medium term and long term, how they can offset it. So they need to be, and that's
Absolutely.
what we will be talking about.
Yeah, no, I think very rightly put. EU has been, quite, I would say, strict with these things, and it's also one of the early adopters of these new standards. So once EU adopts them, it also then gradually spreads across the globe. EU
100%.
usually is the first one taking it. So even SMBs listening in, if you are ready for this, then you are ready for the world in a way, right?
100%.
You spoke about steel exports. I think just to put that in perspective, if let's say you are a mid-size steel exporter in India shipping 10,000 tons a year worth of steel, and your carbon footprint is high because of what you said, Aniket, the production methods, the production systems, the carbon footprints are still high in India. you could be looking at an additional cost of nearly 2 million
Yeah.
euros annually. So if you convert that, that's roughly 18 crores just in carbon charges. So you can think of how big the impact is in this case.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why here's what these sectors, this hits the sectors hardest: steel, aluminum, cement, and fertilizers. They are the right now, like the biggest impact.
Hmm.
But by 2028, 30, I think they are expanding to polymers, chemicals, and batteries. So if you
Hmm.
are in chemical, you think I got time, but you are already behind.
You're
Just
already
just
behind.
to keep those in perspective.
Yeah, I think that's also true for the other two. Now, let's take GDPR for example. So, that, as it says here, that's a 20 million euro elephant in the room. That's 4% of the global turnover.
Hmm.
Whichever is higher in this case. So, I think when we spoke, you mentioned your experience at Amazon. So,
Yeah.
you have experienced this firsthand. What was the risk that you saw in that?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, GDPR is a brutal because it has the teeth, right? We are not talking about a slap on the wrist.
Mm,
So let's say suppose if you are an IT company, a BPO, even a manufacturing company for that sake, with an EU-facing website, you are processing EU citizens' data, and they are very, very serious about it. And if you have a
mm,
data breach and you don't report it within 72 hours,
mm.
you don't have a standard contractual clauses in place, you can face a penalties of up to 20 million euros, which is big,
Euros.
substantial impact. So
Yeah.
for IT, it is big. Yeah, you can't. They're very clear on their data breach, their
Mm.
data handling practices. So that's something that you got the SMBs needs to be prepared for.
Yeah, and when we were looking at this, we also found that India, in particular, doesn't have that adequacy status, as they call it,
Yeah,
under GDPR, right? For from the EU side, so that means that every Indian company needs to have that extra legal framework, the SCC framework. Data protection officers will obviously come to those details as we go along this, but. That is table stakes now. No, that is really the basic framework that every SMB would need. That is not optional anymore, right?
it is not. It is not. And I think, as you said, there's the third pillar also, rules of origin. That
Mm,
one sounds like a bureaucratic, to be honest, but it's actually the biggest revenue unlock. If you qualify for a preferential origin under the FTA, you pay on 0% tariff instead of
mm.
12%. So your documentation has even just a one error, one missing line in your certificate of origin, you pay full 12%. So that's the
No.
impact that we are talking about.
Yeah, and we have already seen companies losing crores of rupees,
Oh yeah.
millions of rupees, or lakhs of dollars, euros, under this, right? Especially the rules of origin documentation thing. The custom authorities at EU, they are not forgiving. So this particularly hits hard, and those three pillars, I think, the CBAM, GDPR, the rules of origin, they aren't separate problems. They are sort of an integrated compliance system, so you need to tackle them together. And I would say, you're if you're thinking about them after you have decided that I'll be an exporter to the EU, then you're really putting the cart in front of the horse.
Yeah,
You should be thinking about these things upfront right now, even before you think, what can I do, what can I send to Europe, for example, if you're an Indian SMB. So that's when you'll get it right. So
100%. So that's why they already have this buying time because these deals are not gonna get signed up by end of this year, right? There will be some legal scrubbing and all that, but this is the time that they need to invest into prepping for the upcoming challenges. This is a huge market. I mean, don't $136 billion. That's a huge market.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So let's look into the 3G framework. We got Shantanu. We last. podcast we discuss about 3C framework, right? Now
Mm.
here we have a 3G compliance flywheel, basically to help SMBs think about this holistically, right? Like look at the
Yeah.
gate, guard, and grow. So
Yeah.
let's break it down. What do you think?
Yeah, we had a 3G framework here. We had a 3C framework. We have 24 more letters to go, I guess.
Yeah,
For different frameworks. But
good.
anyway, no, this is actually very simply put. It's very intuitive as well. So it's gate, guard, grow. Gate is all about rules of origin, right? You need to unlock tariff-free entry first. As I said, some of these things you have to think about even before you can think of what markets should I go into, what can I export, at what prices, etc. All of these things come later. uh, Things like rules of origin, you need to think about that first. That means that you need to get your rex registrations done. That's a registered exporter system, in which you need to register yourself as an exporter. You need to document your value addition, in country value addition as they call it. You need to prove that you are meeting certain value addition standards, 40-50%. It's a case to case basis, but it's in that range, 40 to 50%.
Yeah, and
You need to
that's
self
critical.
certify your exports. Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned self-certifying your exports. That is important. That's you're going from paying 12% duty to 0%.
Mm.
So let's say suppose for a 10 crore shipment, that's 1.2 crore in tariff saving. That's huge.
Mhm.
That's the gate you're opening. So you can't
Yeah.
miss that.
Yeah. And once you do that, I think we come to step two here, the guard step, as we are calling it. So once you are in the EU market, you need to guard against those two big ones, big threats here, the carbon tax and GDPR. For CBAM, it means that carbon audits implementing reductions on your power consumption or utilizing renewable resources for your power generation, investing in upgrading your equipment. All of that comes as part of CBAM. Reporting it to the registry as well becomes important. So it's a whole set of processes and workflows that you need to then start following. Right?
Yeah, and then for the GDPR, I think the means data mapping, right? Knowing what data you collect and where it is stored. If you access it, appointing a data protection officer, putting a standard contractual clauses in place. So generally, what company do, they have a like 72-hour breach response protocol for that. And Yeah, these are not nice to have thing. You buyers are already asking for proof of compliance before they sign the contract. So you gotta be very diligent um,
Yeah.
on your documentation piece and showing all this compliance certification to the EU buyers.
I think one thing that everyone needs to keep at the back of their mind is uh, this kind of a trade doesn't mean that it's a free for all market, right? Anyone can come in and start playing. Obviously, it took this long, it took more than 20 years to come to fruition because there were things like these that were being pondered upon, and people were trying to find the middle path, because
Yep,
even the EU producers are going to be competitive, right? They are not just going to let anyone come in lying down. So you need to be aware of the fact that the compliances requirements are such high, because that is what makes you competitive to sell in that market. So use this in fact as a competitive mode, as you know, as
100%.
we said here in the takeaway. um, the step three here is the grow part. This is where compliance becomes that competitive mode, right? You embed these compliances in your processes, link them to your ERP system or embed them in your ERP systems, train your staff accordingly, and you market yourself as a certified compliant supplier. And then your competitors are, already, who are not doing this, are already 18 to 24 months behind you, and they are scampering to catch up with you. if you do it.
Yeah, yeah, very well put. And I think the what the SMBs needs to be thinking about is the compliance is not a three separate headaches. It's just a one integrated system. When done right, becomes your sustainable competitive advantage, like competitive mode, as you said. So you're not just avoiding the penalties for just sake. I think you're building a barriers to entry for the other competitors to enter in. So long-term advantage, start building that and get prepared for that. Okay, next one, timeline and urgency. How are we? What are we
Yeah, I
talking?
think this is important as well. As we have, we already mentioned this, but the timing becomes important. You need to think about this now to be ready for things that are going to unravel down the road. And this is where I think most of the SMBs typically get it wrong because they think about it later. They just procrastinate on a lot of these things, and by the time it hits them, it's already too late. So let's walk through this compliance collision, that's happening between 25 to 2030, 2025 to.
Yeah. So here is what critical to understand. This, if you look at this from chart, right? India EU FTA is phasing in different, is phasing in tariff reductions over time. So by
Mm,
Q1 2026, which is this year, 70% of the goods will be duty free. 2027 quarter two, it's
mm,
85%, and by 2030, we are at 93%.
mm.
So the collision is in that exact same window. Three major regulatory regimes are kicking in. So
Yeah,
keep that in
exactly.
mind. Yeah,
Yeah, and just to make it more clear to the listeners, let's say in 2026 Q1, CBAM's definitive phase begins, right?
yeah,
That's when the carbon charges actually start. Then in Q2 of 2027, about a year and a quarter from now, the EU deforestation regulation requires the various kind of GPS track proofs of your products that they are not coming from any deforested land, etc. So that kicks in Q2 of 27. Then in Q1 of 2028, digital product passports become mandatory for textiles. So it's a phased manner, but the most important things are hitting now, right? The CBAMs are hitting now.
100%. Yeah, and so if you got this perfect storm, 80% of your tariff benefits are realized by 2027, right? So in that exact same period, the three toughest compliance regimes are activated. So if you wait
Mm.
until 2027, I think to start the compliance, you're already lost. Yeah,
Yeah, and as we said, companies who procrastinate, they think that 2028 is still far off. It's still 2 years to go. I'll deal with that later. They get engrossed in the daily, weekly, quarterly firefights, but then all of this has a big lead time. To build this
yeah,
compliance infrastructure, it takes about 18 to 24 months. Carbon audits alone take 6 months. So GDPR data mapping, DPO training, all of those things are not less than 6 months at a time. So everything is going to take time, and the later you push it to, the harder it's going to become for you.
basically the clock is ticking,
Right, exactly.
right? All right.
And the critical warning here, if you see the takeaway, um, EU buyers are already asking for a compliance proof before signing the contracts, right? So um, it's not that I have the contract in place now. I can take some of my own time to really do the paperwork and get the boxes ticked. It's not that they are already asking for these compliances before the papers are signed. So we have actually seen examples from German automotive companies who require CBAM carbon certificates upfront. Right? So if you are not able to produce them upfront, you're not even called up for the bidding stage. So
100%.
it's as simple as that.
All right. Moving on to the next slide. This is very important. CBM deep dive. So let's get tactical, Shantanu. I think
Yeah.
Uh, you can walk through a real example. Like
Yeah, and it's quite an interesting example. Again, we have taken it as one illustration of how, um, let's say, a mid-size steel manufacturer which is producing 10,000 tons annually and is exporting to Germany, how can they reduce their carbon footprint? Now, let's say their baseline emissions are, as it says here, 2.6 tons per ton of CO2 emissions per ton of steel. Right? So at let's say roughly 80 euros per ton of CO2, which is the current CBAM rate, which is the current tax rate, you are paying about 208 euros per ton of steel in carbon charges, right? So that means that it's roughly, I think, 2.8 million for a 10,000 ton exporter.
wow, that's roughly 19 crore. That's a
Yeah, exactly.
massive hit to
It's a
your margin.
massive. Yeah, and here's where it gets interesting. If you invest in just one area, how are you generating power for that furnace to run? If you invest in solar power to run your operations, then you can drop your emissions to 2 tons of CO2 per ton of steel from 2.6, which was earlier. You drop it to 2 tons. So that brings your CBAM costs down to 160 euros per ton. So,
Yeah, yeah, that's a good data point. And then, if like we are talking about steel furnace, right? If you upgrade
mm,
to an electric arc furnace, which has a much more less carbon footprint, you drop further to 1.6 tons of carbon dioxide, which is around 128 euros per ton. So think about that. If you're gone from a 208 euros to 128 euros, that's an around $80, 80 euro saving per ton saving.
per
That's
ton
about
saving. And
28% reduction, which is massive.
yeah, and in this example, as we have considered that exporter to be exporting about 10,000 tons annually, that comes to about 800,000 euros in annual savings, which is seven roughly 7 crores, right? So, with just those two things, investments in solar energy and your investments in upgrading your furnace, I think both put together, it could be somewhere between 15 to 20 lakhs of rupees, and you're saving about 7 crores. So the annual payback or the payback period is actually much less than a
Less
year.
than a year, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the one real success story, Shiva Forging in Pune, very close to our hometown. So, looks like they invested 18 lakh in a carbon audit and solar installation. They reduce around CO2 by around 40%. And their EU buyer, a German auto parts company, and they saved around 80,000 euros per year in
Mm.
CBM charges.
Mm.
Yeah, astonishing results. They say they got a contract worth 8 crore rupees, so which is
Mm.
huge for them.
Which is huge actually. And so, I think what this example it shows us is that the compliance roadmap is fairly straightforward in a way. So, step one, you baseline your carbon accounting,
Hmm.
measure your scope one, scope two emissions via your utility bills, let's say. Then step two, you engage a CBAM auditor like TUV India or SGS. They usually charge about, again, as I said, 15 to 20 lakhs for their overall service. It's a fairly comprehensive service that they provide. And then step three is implement those carbon reductions, whatever these agencies would advise on. It could be your power generation techniques or methods. It could be your equipment that consume the biggest amount of or the largest amount of power, waste heat recovery. So there are ways to reduce your carbon footprint. And then the last step here is to set up quarterly reporting, which then gets reported to the EU CBAM registry portal. Right? So it's a standard process that one can follow.
100%. Critical thing, I think, it's not one and done. I think CBM does require quarterly submissions. So you need a system in place, not just a one-time
Yeah,
consultant.
not
So
just a
you
one single.
gotta report this quarterly basis. They are very serious about it. If you miss that, there will be a serious penalties on that. We don't want to lose, you don't want to spill the water if, like, for years of hard work or months of hard work that you've already invested in. So just be
Absolutely.
aware of that. Let's go into the deep dive on the GDPR now.
Yeah, so this is where I think the Indian SMBs are most confused, if I can put it quite plainly, because they are not even sure if GDPR applies to them. So,
Yeah, great question. So I was reading about it. Like, GDPR applies if you meet one of these three criteria. There are, like, if you sell goods or services to EU customers, uh,
mm,
even if you are based in India. The second one is the process EU employees data. For example, as we mentioned earlier, right? If you have a German subsidiary or EU contractors, uh, uh, like, how do you process their data? The third is your website. Is your website accessible to all EU citizens? Which basically means if you have a .com domain with a contact form and you are in a scope.
right. Yeah, and I think it is applicable to almost every service provider. Now, this shifts the focus from specific products to services. So the short answer for anyone thinking whether this applies to them or not is yes, it does apply to everyone of you, and the penalties are not theoretical here. We have seen some companies being hit with 500,000 euro worth of penalties for data breaches. So it's not a simple penalty there.
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah, and then the brutal stat is 70% of Indian IT SMBs currently fail GDPR
Hmm.
compliant audits. So 7 out of 10, that's huge. They
Right.
don't have a five core requirements in place, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah. So since you mentioned that, let's go through the five core requirements.
Yeah.
You see them on the right hand side of this slide here. So number one is data mapping. You need to document what personal data you collect. You could be collecting names, email addresses, or IP addresses, um, their physical addresses. There's a whole bunch of data points that you might be collecting. Where are you storing it? Who has access to those data points? So all these things need to be tracked. This is called the record of processing activities, or ROPA, that every company collecting this data needs to adhere to.
Yeah, and that legal basis, this number two, that's very important. You can't just collect the data just you feel like it. You need a legal justification for everything: consent, contract performance, or legitimate interest.
Hmm.
And the consent has to be explicit, very explicit. So the
Yeah.
pre-tick boxes don't just count.
Yeah, exactly. And I can again relate to this because in my previous company, when we were launching some online services and products, we had to actually go back into every system and make this change. Earlier, all of the tick boxes at the bottom of the form used to be pre-ticked, or they just used to be a default as a selection, and that had to be changed because of these new GDPR laws. So
100%.
it's a very small thing, apparently, but has a lot of deeper implications, right? So similarly, this one, number three here, standard contractual clauses. Now, since India doesn't have the adequacy status that we spoke about earlier under GDPR, every company needs to sign those standard contractual clauses with every EU client, right? So you can't just have one document being copy pasted everywhere. For every EU client that you are serving, you need to have that SCC. These are legal templates that ensure that Indian companies meet EU data protection standards. So
Yeah.
that's an important one as well.
The fourth one is also important. The data protection officer. So actually, you need to invest like you need to set up aside 3 to 5 lakhs per year for an
Mm.
outsource data processing
Yeah.
officer. That is must. If you are processing a large volume of data, you gotta
Yeah,
have that data protection officer working.
absolutely. Yeah, and the last one here, 72-hour breach protocol. If you have a data breach, you quoted an example, Aniket. If that kind of a breach happens, then you need to report that to the EU Data Protection Authority, and you need to notify the affected individuals. Let's say your server gets hacked, then you have 72 hours before you need to inform the EU Data Protection Authority. And if you don't do that, then there are penalties, and those are severe. Right?
Yep. All right. Let's talk about the ROI, right? EU buyers will drop you if you can't prove GDPR compliance. So we have seen companies retain around 5 to 7 crore contracts solely because they had their GDPR house in order. The
Yeah.
payback period was 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, because this will typically cost you about 4 to 10 or 15 lakhs to as an investment. That includes data mapping, DPO appointment, the things that we spoke about. So,
Correct.
yeah, 6 to 12 months payback period is quite possible in this case.
100%. All right. So this is a very important topic as well. Rules of origin.
Yeah.
Um, um, I think where I see a most confusion and
Mm.
also the biggest revenue unlock. Uh,
Yeah.
so let's dive into the core concept. What do you think?
Yeah. Right. So let's do that. So rules of origin is at the end of the day, it's about proving that your product has been substantially made in India. Now, those are quote unquote very specific terminologies and important terminologies. Um, Only if you are substantially doing some value add in India, you qualify for that 0% tariff that we have mentioned under the recent FTA that was signed. So instead of paying 12%, which was the case earlier, it reduces to 0%. But you have to show that you have substantially made that product in India. And again, the by product, the thresholds are different, but it's typically 40 to 50% of value addition in India that you need to show.
Yeah. And that's a 5 step clarification process, right? The step one is the source, which let you identify where your inputs come from, then the assign the correct HS codes. Step two is the transformation, like how ensure you're doing enough processing in India to qualify. Three is the calculate, verify you made the 40 to 50% value
Yeah.
addition threshold using that X works method minus
Yeah.
the imported results. Yeah,
Yeah.
imported inputs actually.
Yeah. And then you have declare, which is a self certification on the DGFT Rex portal. Now, that is also quite critical because, unlike the previous norms where you needed a government certificate, uh, this particular deal it allows for self certification. So it's sort of a double edged sword here because you don't need to run around get trying to get certificates and approvals. You can
No,
self-certify, but then the burden of proof is on you. If
on
there is
you.
an audit and your documentation doesn't hold up, then you end up paying the full 12% tariff, and that too retroactively. It's not from that point onwards. For whatever period of time you have not had that level of documentation, you would need to pay that 12% tariff on that.
Yeah, very critical. The last one is the verify. Maintain that audit documentation for at least 5 years. So
Hmm.
you can audit you up to 5 years after the shipment. Remember that. So you
Right,
don't take.
right. Yeah, and spoke about the product specific rules. They slightly different from product to product, but the it really depends on what product it is, because then it becomes critical on what is the definition of substantial value add. So in this case, if you see steel, aluminum, the rule is melt and pour, which means that you need to have melted the metal in India. If you're just rolling billets by importing them from some other country or like China, and then just rolling them and exporting them, then you don't qualify for this tariff waiver.
100%. 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah. Textiles also, it's a double transformation. I think you need to at least two stages of production in India, like
right.
spinning and weaving, or weaving and dyeing. So for engineer goods, it's typically 40 to 50% of the value addition calculated as this X works price minus imported inputs.
Very important inputs, correct. And the trap is here that a lot of Indian exporters, let's say, they use German steel components in their machinery. So they
Yeah.
import from Germany, they use it in their machinery and then export. But unless that German supplier has an EUR1 certificate proving that the steel originated in EU, then you can't count it towards your value addition under the accumulation rules, right?
Uh,
So there's a lot of fine print there that you need to be aware of and comply with.
and exactly, and that's where the documentation errors kills the deals, right? If we have seen the textile exporter also lose an 8 crore contract. They couldn't produce proper origin documentation, which the EU customs rejected that shipment, and they paid the 12% full 12% tariff, and the buyer walked out.
Yeah. Anyway, so I think the bottom line here is that if you invest 3 to 8 lakhs in proper rules of origin documentation, having those systems in place, then and you hire a consultant, let's say for your first 3 shipments. I think it's a recommended practice to do that. Get your Rex registrations done, and it takes about 4 to 6 weeks. So at least the country of origin or region of rules of origin compliances are relatively fairly simpler, and you can get it done faster.
100%.
All right,
All right,
so
let's look into the
moving,
sector strategies now.
yeah, so let's run through the sector specific ones here. We looked at uh, the earlier examples, right, already.
Yeah, so steel and aluminum, if you look at the CBM is your top priority. High carbon intensity means higher charges. So the
Mhm.
action item there is steel carbon audits in Q1 2026. GDPR risk is low, right? Uh,
Mm.
and the rules of origin is tricky because of the melt and pour requirement.
Right, exactly. On the other hand, now for textiles, I think the CBAM is medium priority. Again, it will impact, since the production process may not be as carbon footprint heavy as steel. The CBAM requirements could be slightly lower. You're not that carbon intensive. GDPR is low too. You're not dealing with a lot of consumer data or population data there. But rules of origin is going to be critical because of that double transformation rule that you
Yeah,
mentioned in the earlier slide, right? So you need to document your yarn origins meticulously in that case, and also the value add that you are doing on it.
oh, that is very important. Yeah. And then if you're talking about a chemical, CBM is a high priority. You're not like until 2028 when the
Hmm.
scope expansion kicks in. So the trap here it is takes around 18 months to build that CBM infrastructure. 18 months. Keep that in mind. So if you wait until 2028, you're already too late. So start carbon accounting right now. Just period.
No,
Yeah. Yeah. Like
absolutely.
map out all your processes, start from your start basics, initially to the, and then start counting those carbon footprints.
Yeah, exactly. We have the IT BPO example here, where the game changes a bit, because then here CBAM rules don't apply, and rules of origin also don't apply. But GDPR is then the most critical compliance in this case, right? It's
Yeah.
your, I think that carries almost the whole of your business risk. So the action item there is DPO appointment, data processing officer appointment, and you have those contractual clauses in place. Having that is
Negotiable.
non-negotiable. Yeah.
100%. And for same similar cases for pharma too, because the CBM is very low on pharma products, but look at the GDPR compliance is very heavy because you are handling healthcare data, which is very, very private for the
Right.
like you are handling millions of citizens health data. So you need a reach compliance for chemical substances and the GDP, good distribution practice certification. So your compliance stack is broader in that case.
Right. Yeah, I think the takeaway is very clear in this case that it's not one size fits all.
It is not
Depending on your sector, your compliances and priorities and timelines are going to change.
100%. Let's look at the pre-mortem risk assessment. What could go wrong? We did some
Mhm.
DFMEA, old,
Yeah, I
old
think the first risk here is a CBAM audit failure. Again, the likelihood is medium, about 40%, but the impact is critical. If you fail a CBAM audit, you're having to pay retroactive carbon charges. For an SMB, those could run into crores of rupees or millions of euros, and could actually push them to the brink of bankruptcy. It's going to be that critical. So the mitigation strategy should be that you engage with TUV agencies like TUV or SGS for mock audits, let's say in the next 2 or 3 months uh, before the real thing hits, right? So once you go through the mock audits, it's like running a pilot. You would understand which areas you need to focus on and then take
Yep.
them up accordingly.
Yeah. Second one is the GDPR data breach, which we talked about. It's high likelihood. The impact is severe because one data breach can cost you around 20 million euros,
Yeah.
almost 4% of your global could be a global turnover, right? So the mitigation plan over there is run a 72-hour protocol, encrypt all the EU data, and then have a quarterly audits, security audits. That's non-negotiable. Um, yeah.
Yeah. The third risk here that we have mentioned is rules of origin documentation gap. Again, the likelihood is high. It's apparently a small process flow or workflow, but then the impacts are critical. The
It
impact
is.
is in fact very severe. Yeah. So one missing line and you pay full
You're done.
12% if it gets down to that. So the mitigation is you could hire a customs consultant for your initial few shipments and get the documentation right, and then just rinse and repeat that process for every order that you set
100%.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Just watching the time, I know the other two risks are very like fairly not severely or critical. So I'll just put it down there. But just on the interest of time, let's move on to the slide 12.
Yep.
Talk about the business case ROI,
Compliance.
which is very critical.
Yes.
I think, yeah, that's a money slide.
Talking about money here. Yes, exactly. So what is the what is the investment that the businesses would need to make for all these compliances? I think for an SMB, we have said 15 lakhs to 50 lakhs. I think that's still a very significant investment, right?
It is. It is. So
Sorry.
if I look at the, let's break down the investment first, right? CBM tools,
Mm.
the carbon auditing, it will take like 12 to 20 lakh rupees. GDPR, DPO, data mapping systems around 4 to 15 lakh. Then talk about the rules of origin documentation and consultation fees that keep between 3 to 8 lakh. So total investment, I think if you add that up, around 15 to 50 lakhs, depending on your
Mm.
complexity of your business. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then on the right, you see the ROI scenarios here. So conservative scenario, it's you unlock about 2 to 4 crore worth of new business revenue from the EU. and your ROI is in that case 400 to 800% with a payback
100%.
period of 3 to 6 months. Yeah.
Yeah. And the moderate scenario is 5 to 7 crore in revenue. We are talking about a ROI of 1,000%, payback in 2 to 4 months.
Yeah, exactly. And if you're really going hard at it, trying to scale it up early and fast and taking an aggressive approach, then you could be in the range of 10 crore or more. The ROI is a staggering 2000% plus and just 1 to 2 months of payback period. So, you can just see the leverage that you get with these small investments.
Yeah.
Relatively small, I would say.
Yeah, and
compared
here is a critical
to
thing that the SMBs needs to understand is like alternative scenario. You don't invest in compliance when the tariff free period ends or when the compliance enforcement gets tightened. You lose 100% of your EU revenue. So you are completely
yeah.
locked out of that.
Completely upfront. And we mentioned this earlier. If we are already seeing these EU customers, clients build those compliance requirements in their RFPs, their requests for proposals, right? So it's right at the gate. If you can't show a CBAM certificate or a GDPR compliance proof, you are not even let inside. You're not even called up for bidding. So it's no more nice to have. It's table stakes, as we called it earlier.
Yeah. So the companies that move the first, I think they are building 24-month competitive moat in advance to surpass their competitors. So so yeah, you're not just compliant, you are protected. Think about that.
Yeah.
So let's move on to the next slide. Implementation. This is very critical. I think most of them might be interested which tools I should use and all that. We'll
Yeah. Let's
dive
go
into.
through that. Go
Yeah.
through that once.
So for CBM, the EU CBM registry portal is where you submit your quarterly reports uh,
Mm.
for carbon accounting software. Look at that carbon chain or Plantly. They integrate with your ERP system, whatever ERP system, Oracle or like there are like many more now. But yeah,
Mm.
they should integrate with your ERP. And for audits, TUV in India and then TUV India and SGS. Actually, those are the go-to certifiers in India. Work with them.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and of course, you could find some of your own. Like for GDPR here, there are compliance platforms like OneTrust or TrustArc that help with data mapping and breach protocols. I'm sure there are more. These are some of the examples that we found. You can
100%.
get your standard contractual clauses, those templates of those SCCs from the EU Commission website itself. And I can say that uh, the EU data portals or the EU Commission websites, they are one of the most well kept data portals across the globe.
Hmm.
Whatever information you need about companies, about countries, about population, anything and everything is very well organized and very well put up on EU Commission's portals. So
Yeah.
a lot of these things you would just get by visiting their sites. You don't even need to look around for a lot of these things.
Yeah.
So go ahead and create a playbook, document who does what in the first 72 hours of the breach. That's about the incident reporting
Hmm.
response. Yeah.
Yeah. So for rules of origin, I think the DGFT has the Rex registration portal for origin management software.
Hmm.
That's also the Amber Road is a good option. I think
Hmm.
it automates HC code assignment
Just
and
one.
value addition
Hmm.
calculations.
Hmm.
So I would say it does add it build a relationship with the customer broker network who knows the EU rules.
Yeah, yeah, it does. And I think we have a couple of examples on the next slide that tell us how that is done. So
Yeah.
those are some real cases that we came across. Tata Metallics, that's a success story. They
Mm.
invested 18 lakhs in carbon audit. They reduced their CO2 by 35% using renewable energy, and they avoided, I think, about 120 euros per ton of in those CBAM charges. right? And because of all of this, they won a 5-year EU contract worth 45 crores, right? So made a difference.
Yeah, that's good to know about success story. A failure is, that XYZ Textiles. I think it's often talked about. And it's a real
Mhm.
company. When I found out about it, so is this a, a real company? But they skip the rules of origin documentation to save a few thousands rupees,
Mm.
and then EU customs rejected their shipment. They had to pay around 12% tariff retroactively, not from that, retroactively. So 96 lakh on an 8 crore investment, and
Wow.
the buyer cancelled the contract. It's
Wow.
a big impact.
I mean, if it is true, then I'm sure some of them have not got their good night's sleep.
Absolutely. So yeah, that's why being thorough in your documentation and your compliance requirement is very important.
Yeah,
All right.
it's like we spoke about some 50 to 18 lakhs worth of investment for 7 to 8 crores of either revenue gain or loss, depending on if you are in the success part or the failure part, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's look into the hidden landmines. I think this is very important time
Yeah,
slide for them also.
yeah, yeah.
So
So I think the number one here, CBAM scope expansion. I think the current scope is aluminium and steel. You mentioned this, Aniket, already. Right now, those two are in scope, but by 2028, 2030, it's expanding to polymers, to chemicals, to batteries, and a whole other set of commodities and products. So if you're a chemical exporter and you're thinking that I have got time, then no, you're not, because it's already on the roadmap now. So start your carbon accounting now, because as we said, it takes time. It takes about 18 months to build that whole compliance infrastructure.
correct. Yeah, the landmine number two is GDPR processor liability. So a lot of
Mm,
IT and BPO companies they think we are just processor. The EU client is responsible. Well, it is
mm,
wrong. Under GDPR, basically the processors are directly liable.
mm.
So just one data breach at your end, you're paying 20 million euros fine, not your
Yeah,
client.
yeah, yeah. Okay. The third one here we have mentioned is rules of origin accumulation trap. Again, we mentioned that example. If you're importing from German steel for your machinery, you can only count it towards your origin rules of origin if the German supplier has an EUR point one or dot one certificate, right? So again, verify the documentation of every supplier that you get your supplies from. Don't just assume that they would be compliant. Get that documentation. It will help generate, or it will help strengthen your own case as you go
Good
along.
point, 100%. And number four is the EUDR retroactive GPS requirement. So the EU deforestation regulation requires you to prove your coffee, rubber, or your any of your products. They
Mm,
are not sourced from land deforested after the December 31st, 2020, not before, after. So you
mm,
need a historical satellite data going back to 2020.
mm,
So I would say start gathering that now if you don't have it.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. The last one here, digital product passports. I think by 2028, textiles will need fiber to serial traceability. Again, very important point for anyone in the textile industry or the yarn industry. Every garment needs a digital record from raw cotton to finished product, or from yarn to fabric, right, as they call it. This takes again about 18 to 20 months to implement, and if you start in 2028 when this is supposed to hit, you're already too late. So again, if you are in that industry, start tracking it now.
Yeah, and these are the landmines are from actual enforcement cases. Companies that avoid them are in the top 20% of the compliant exporters. So the one
Hmm.
that they don't, they are paying retroactive penalties and losing the contracts.
Using contracts. Absolutely. All right, I think let's come to the pinnacle now.
30, 60
Let's
day.
give our
Right?
listeners a 30, 60 day, 90, 30, 60, 90 day action plan. What should they start doing
Yeah.
from tomorrow, from
So
Monday?
from day 1 to 30, I think I would say baseline assessment is very important. Sit down with your team, identify your gaps, map out all your processes. Do you have a CBM carbon data? Ask that question. Do you have a GDPR data mapping? Do you have a origin documentation, rules of origin document? If not, start preparing for it. Get budget approval from your leadership, hire a consultant, and then register for REX on the DGFT portal.
Mm. Yeah. The next one, 31 to 60, execute the core compliance works. You can run your CBAM carbon audit reports with the agencies, with the likes of TUV and SGS,
Yes.
and complete your GDPR mapping. You should know what data to collect, where it is stored. Then you need to finalize your rules of origin documentation for at least your top three products. So again, do an 80-20, look at what the top three and top five products are that contribute to 80% of your revenue, etc. You can appoint a data protection officer. I think it becomes very important that all these things are streamlined through a single point of contact. So a DPO becomes important here, and then start the integration into your ERP systems. So
Yeah.
your compliances are embedded in your systems
Yeah.
from that point.
And the next third month is going to be testing and refinement. So run mock CBM audits, train your staff on the GDPR breach protocols, basically ship your first certified export under the rules of origin. Then you submit your first quarterly CBM report, monitor that result and refine your processes.
And takeaway, the main takeaway here, execute now. I think it's an urgency message for everyone. EU clients are already asking for compliance proof. So if you are executing the plan now, only then are you ready for 2027, right? When the wave of enforcement comes. And if you are waiting till that time, then you're late, as we have seen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think let's close with the decision framework. If EU revenue is more than 20% of your business, uh,
Hmm.
execute now. You are a category leader, full compliance, full investment. If EU is 5 to 20% of your business, take a phased approach. You're a fast follower.
You can go to the next slide, Aniket. You
Oh,
listed it down there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So this is what I was covering. Is the So if you use 5 to 20% of your business, take a phase approach. You're a fast follower. Then the start with the highest risk area for your sector. If
Correct.
EU is less than 5% of your business, then evaluate whether it is worth the compliant cost, or if you
Mm.
could
Yeah.
should pivot to other markets.
To other markets. Exactly. That becomes very important. And one last thing that we can probably leave you with is, will you bet your EU businesses on hoping that the enforcements will not be strict? That's at the back of my mind, back of everyone's mind. Typically, businesses think that all this is, these guys are talking, it's going to be this difficult and this strict. What if it is not? Why would I need to invest so much money in doing it? But then hoping is not a strategy. Common sense would tell you, if you see here the 70-30 rule, that's real. Only 30% of SMBs will succeed in this scenario. 70% of SMBs will fail GDPR. And again, that's the track record that has been so far. So if you want to beat that, then you become the SMB that's going to beat the trends. So
100%.
the market is going to consolidate around the 30% who are compliant.
Correct. So, I mean, we need to shift our mindset. Compliance is not a cost center. It is basically a competitive advantage. So you are building your competitive advantage. So around 24 months, as we already discussed, it would take around 12 to 24 months for you to build that, but it will protect you from your competitors. It will,
No, that's very well
that's gonna
said.
be, yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Pure finance terms don't put all of this in your cost bucket. It's actually in your investment bucket. So
100%.
that's what is going to help you grow. All right. So I think that's all that we had today, Aniket. We have left the links to the compliance roadmaps and
Yes.
tools. We'll leave that in our posts as well on LinkedIn. And
Yeah.
as always, if you find this valuable, if you find this useful, relevant, talking about this and exploring these areas, these ideas, then share it with your network. We have been posting this on LinkedIn as well as uploading these videos on YouTube for posterity. So watch them, comment on them, share them, like them. That's only going to give scale up some of these good ideas and good conversations in a wider network. So let's
100%.
engage. Yeah.
Yep, can't agree more. Thank you all for listening today. Really enjoyed, and if you think we have given you some good insights, good data, good framework to mitigate the risk that you're seeing with this additional opportunity coming in this year and next year with the India EU partnership. Uh, do let us know in your comments on our LinkedIn post as well as the YouTube. We would like to hear from you, and also let us know what topics you would like us to start prepping for in our next podcast. I will be looking for that. With that,
Yep.
thank you all for joining today, and see you next week. Have a
Thank
great
you. See
yeah,
you
take
next
care.
week.
Bye bye.
Have a good week. Bye. Okay.